All right, got to do a little bitty countdown. It's Friday, and then it gives people 30 seconds to show up, the notifications to go out, and then we'll do the show, wrap up the week, and see what Isaias may bring for the southeastern U.S., because one way or another, that guy is on his way. All right, be right back. Good to see everybody here on this Friday afternoon. We are going to kind of look at Isaiah and some kind of amazing photographs that ended up coming out of Puerto Rico just this morning as the incredible runoff surges, between about 4 and 20 inches worth of rainfall off that island, that very mountainous island, and then out into the Atlantic where the waters are honestly a whole lot bluer than the muddy waters leaving that particular island. So let's just go right on into it. Let's start off with Australia, as we often do. What we're looking at in this particular instance is Hobart. So it says weather zone Hobart being the capital of Tasmania. So it is off the southeastern coast of Australia. And they just had their fourth driest July in 139 years of records. And that location is on the eastern side of a western mountain range. So typically when those westerly breezes come on through, they tend to downslope, they dry out, they warm up. So that's one of the reasons why, despite some much heavier rainfall totals farther to the north, closer to the warmer conditions, because we are down under, that we ended up bringing in quite a bit of rain for that New South Wales coastline areas, the Gold Coast and so forth over the last week, as they're definitely decidedly into their winter time season. Mumbai, on the other hand, in India, dealt with 58 inches of rain between July 1 and 28. This is 3 days ago now. India State capital saw the highest rainfall total this month in the past 76 years, where they did a little site relocation, so they can't take it for the whole city getting the most rain ever. It's just for that one particular sited location. You mean siting, meaning where that instrument cluster is particularly located. But they've had a lot of water, and it is nearly upper 70 percentile rain total for their entire annual totals happened just in these last 28 days of July. And I'm sure now, because we're coming up on, or just have not yet passed midnight, I guess we passed midnight over there since we're just 11 p.m. In London time, or UTC time, 23Z, so that we'll get those kind of record totals. That those will be published here within the day. So elsewhere, we're looking at Isaias to see where this little guy goes. It is going to be a bit of a substantial storm. Hey, Karen, good to see you. Joan, getting some rain out on the valley floor. Good on you, because we've got a fire up here on the southern end of the development that I'm particularly in. So we've been hearing sirens here and there as they scramble to get that little brush fire that is growing very quickly because of the 20-25-mile-an-hour winds. Gratefully, the winds are from the north and the fire is to my south. So that means we're in pretty good shape. But nevertheless, folks who were deeply and profoundly impacted by Dorian got to hunker down, because Isaias will be there over the course of this weekend. By Sunday morning up towards Daytona Beach, Saturday evening coming up on Miami. This cone is the zone of possibility or potential seeing impacts as it continues to move towards the northwest. All right, the Hurricane Hunter aircraft kind of rolling on in through Isaiah today, kind of doing the crisscross. We've got a couple of different types of planes. We've got props. I want to say the PC-3 Orion, but I probably didn't get that right. But then they've got the Gulfstream, and then of course the larger craft. This was an interesting photograph over in the Middle East, where you've got the hubbub, the big dust storm, and then as that sand, all literally electrified because of the churning and the static electricity in there, you can get these random lightning strikes. And then on top of that, we had a little bit of a hood cloud right in through there, a roll cloud kind of just being developed right on top of that rolling sand as it moved out over the water. And just really kind of an interesting phenomena Look at all those oil wells. So we're obviously someplace where we're near an oil depot, even though with all the oil, we're going to have solar to power the streetlights, and that just kind of makes sense. So really kind of a phenomenal image, and I'm going to want to say Saudi Arabia. The other, maybe if I pop into this tweet, we'll be able to get a proper translation. Above and below, yeah, there's the date and time, but not necessarily I'm not familiar with it. All right, here we are in Puerto Rico. With still, the easterly trade winds have now resumed, and Maiwa is over here where they picked up 13 inches of rain. And then down in here towards Cabo Rojo, there's Boquerón, great little restaurants, great little resort town, but they were upwards of 19 inches worth of rain. And then all along these northern areas, much of San Juan, between 4 and 7 inches worth of rainfall. So these rivers are running high. And this island is not even 60 miles in width. It is not big, so these rivers have very short runs, and so there's a lot of silt and sediment that are not moving out into the Atlantic. And here's a primary river here with Arecibo here, and this is a main water source. And there's so much silt that comes in these big rain events that eventually the reservoirs get filled up. The sediment just builds up, and that's something that still has not happened in the wake of Maria. That has not happened 3 years down the road. So that needs to happen because the reservoir capacity has been reduced by 40 to 55%, depending on which one we're looking at. So now today they're enjoying the high and dry skies, but everything's green and the waters are running very quickly out to sea. Out west, we've got the heat, and this is a location where I worked for the last 10 years of my on-air career, Pocatello, Idaho, where they're at 103 degrees. This is within the hour. Right there's the timestamp within the hour, and it does establish a record or tie the record for the day, and then the fourth highest all-time temperature. And they're running at about 4,400 foot elevation. So at those kind of elevations, they tend not to get heat for too terribly long. All right, as we look on into the larger view for the world, what I'm kind of looking at down here, and when I do bring up this larger view, are those locations that we don't typically look at, like Australia, where they've got a low dropping in, and this is out over this coming week, so they're going to be cool, unsettled. The breezes are going to pick up. Another monster storm having just passed the Cape of Africa, kind of rolling out in there, will get recharged, and then also approaching Western Australia. New Zealand just plain unsettled after some gorgeous weather recently, but within about a week, more winter-like conditions settling in. It's still cool and unsettled through southern Argentina, Chile as well. And then that monster high that has been the news maker in the global regions. Let's see if I can't come up here, global northern hemisphere, pop this baby up. And this has been the high that's sitting over Siberia. It kind of reforms, drops into Eurasia, that region, the Urals and eastern Russia, and then only to be replaced by some very, very cool weather. Cool weather kind of hangs over the eastern states as well, and that is likely to reinforce and continue the cool, rainy weather that's been in place. I'm back into China here. A couple of zones that, as we look at the rainfall animation out over the next 16 days, it's Korea. Korea really has my attention because it's storm after storm on that North Korean border with China. Heavy, heavy rains. We've got another tropical storm down through Hong Kong and on up towards Taiwan. That begins to press ashore. But it really is Korea that gets hammered as we get to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this coming week. So we're going to be watching out for that region. All right, satellite view of where the Three Gorges Dam. We've talked about that recently as well. And Three Gorges is up here. Imagine if this thing were to break. There were notifications that came down from the high command that we needed to prepare, or they needed to prepare, for the evacuation of 35 to 38 million people. And look at the river and how it bends and winds. And what's interesting is every location right here where the river bends, I'm going to see if I can't zoom this in just a little bit more. It bends. Imagine, say, a 30-meter wall of water racing down, and that's going to run right in here. That's where the momentum is. It's not going to want to make the turn around this horseshoe bend again. It's going to get some speed straight away and push on in here where we've got a civilization. Same on through. We've got a straightaway here. Speed picks up, and then it runs into a civilization or a development as the river then begins to bend and turn away. So there's some interesting things that are happening here with just the local topography, that if we were to see a breach of this dam and a break of its ability to hold the water back, how the flood is going to bank up and push up, much like a tsunami does, against the walls of these rivers. So it's against the Yangtze. It's really kind of a tenuous and just somewhat scary situation. All right, let's just keep going on here. Back stateside, we've got a nice, cool low pressure kind of sitting into the into the middle part of the Mississippi River Valley, right in through here, through Arkansas, Oklahoma, getting some rain. Missouri did last night. There's still a few areas getting some flood warnings, county by county, not necessarily widespread, but county by county. And the West is just warm and dry. Warm. That's almost an understatement, but I don't see a lot of plumes from fire, so that's the good news. Closer inspection, we're watching Isaias now working its way through the Bahamas and up and through here. We really don't have an eye wall, kind of really beginning to be identifiable. We've got some larger clusters of thunderstorms, but they really haven't tightened up. We just don't see that really aggressive organization, and for those in the way of the storm, that is just fine. Let's let the rain, let's let the wind come on through, because it is a wet storm. It just doesn't have a lot of really strong winds just yet, and that core of the storm is smallish. All right, radar across the states. You can see the green where we've got along where the Ohio River and not quite towards the the Missouri Mississippi meet up, but nevertheless some heavier rains and some isolated, again, county by county kind of flooding. Even south into Colorado, and I think I've got that baby right here. Come on in here. Big storms rolling through Texas. Yeah. So we've got some slower moving thunderstorms, and with some of the soils just so dry here, they almost become hydrophobic. Hydrophobic meaning it can rain, you can pour water on it. It's like pouring water in flour. It just beads up. It doesn't relax and then soak in. And then that's when you have your problems, where you can get your gullies and your arroyos just really filling up. Here's the record heat we talked about yesterday. Crazy heat through the Mountain West. It's probably 102 in Pocatello, Salt Lake City. It's just hot. And versus Missouri, where normally they would be upper 80s and 90s, and we have upper 60s and lower 70s. So that makes it very comfortable in those particular locations. All right, let's pop over there just because we can. Still some radar or some showers in Puerto Rico. Nothing too terribly widespread, and that's probably the good news. They need a break. These soils have got to kind of drain out, and that will reduce the risk of flooding. But what we see is that risk of severe weather continuing along the Ohio River Valley, and then even into Mexico, where the big rains are still happening along the Sierras. The hot in the west, that's obviously the news, and it's going to stay the news through this weekend. And then as we get to Monday, Tuesday next week, we'll finally get a push of some cooler air. But until then, we've got record highs. Friday the 31st, that being today. There's some of the records. Baker and Burns, Oregon, still at 100. Needles, California at 120, breaking the old record by 3 degrees. Flagstaff at 92, breaking the old record by 1 degree, set back in 77. Spokane, Washington at 102. Kingman, Arizona at 110 for the forecast high. Imperial at 100, tying the record set back in 1934. So that kind of heat just does not look like it kind of is ready to let go. It's good to see you guys on there, Karen, Tracy, and even Sasha. Yeah, you're a little closer to that fire than we are over here today. So bless your hearts. It looks like the wind's going the right way, and I'm beginning to see some clouds moving on in too. So as we look out towards the weekend, this high pressure remains in place through the west. This is 36 hours out. Let me back up. It kind of stays there. The other little disturbance, this being the Hurricane Isaias. And we'll see it come on close, a single tap, and that generates a sounding, and I don't really want to do that. And so it just kind of grazes the Florida coastline through the weekend, and then grazes the Georgia coastline, and then slips into the Carolinas. I would trust by then it would be somewhat weaker, but these things can be very difficult beasts to forecast, so you just kind of just warn, and you let people prepare, and either they hunker down and the storm isn't so bad as you're expected, and that's okay, but you'd rather do that than have the event kind of blow up in your face, and you're expecting a Category 1, and all of a sudden it's a healthy 3 working on 4 as it makes landfall, and then that kind of an event is really tough to to prepare enough for, because then your power could be out for a period of time. But this strong high that really anchors all the way to the North Canadian Arctic shore, that kind of begins to take a little bit of a beating as some cool air comes in off the Pacific. So in a week's time, really even by Monday night and into Tuesday, some cool air will be moving into the northwest, and that will give those folks up in the Pacific Northwest, north of the Rockies, a little bit of relief from the heat. Maybe some rain, maybe not so much some rain, because it's been so dry that whatever's coming isn't going to be enough to compensate for what has dried out. And then as we move to the middle of August, 13, 14, 15 August, the high rebounds very, very strongly, and we'll probably be revisiting some of this record heat once again as we get to the weekend. So, yeah, Tracy, thanks for that. And I'd love to spend a winter down there. Maybe not so much in New Zealand, now that I'm aware and watching New Zealand and how no wonder they're so green. I'll just leave it at that. They get lots and lots of rain and deal right in the middle of these storms, and they got to stand tough as that aggressive rain and the winds just come in off that Western Ocean. So, good on you for moving to the Gold Coast, where the weather just seems to be a whole lot nicer. All right, guys, have a great weekend out there. We'll see what happens with Isaias on Monday. We'll check on in there, and if we do see an interesting landfall, then I'll pop in here live and go from there. All right, have a great weekend, and hey, everybody, hey, keep looking up.